people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. We now know more about who Sarah Bailey is going to be fighting on the undercard of an MVP in Canada show set to go down early next month on the 7th in Toronto. Tamara Thibault's going to be on that card. Lucas Body is going to be headlining, and Sarah Bailey, she's going to be facing Christina Navarro. In defense of her newly obtained WBA title, Sarah Bailey, the defending champion, sports a professional record of 5 wins with no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet. It's very early in her career for her to have already become a world champion, what can be a gift and a curse. Because the sooner you get a belt, the sooner somebody wants to take it from you. Spain's own Christina Navarro will attempt to pry the black and gold belt away from Sarah, sporting a professional record of 6 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. I wouldn't say she's world level. There's no evidence that she is. And that's not a knock on her, that's just saying she doesn't have very many fights, and she already has 2 career blemishes. A loss to Ireland's Christina O'Hara and a loss to Isabel Riverio before that. Never fought in a 10-rounder. So maybe she's domestic level, maybe European level, but not world level. Coming off of 3 consecutive wins over pedestrian level opponents, girls with more losses than victories, and one making a professional debut, that tells you what you need to know about Christina. Whereas Sarah Bailey, the defending champion, was a bit more ambitious. She's already fought in 10 rounders 3 times. And in her last fight, she faced the vastly more experienced former champion of Mexico, Anabel Ortiz, won a unanimous decision. Now she's fighting Christina. At first glance, I like Sarah to win a points decision. I'm gonna give Christina a closer look, but preliminary thoughts, I like Sarah to win a decision in her own neck of the woods. Sarah Bailey, the least experienced champion of the 3 champions in the light flyweight division. This is a major opportunity, boxing on an MVP show broadcasted on DAZN, major platform, which might make for a bigger blip on the radar than the fights that the other 2 champions are set to be having. Lourdes Juarez, the WBC champion, is set to be returning to action sometime in March against an opponent that has yet to be announced, and if she stays champion, she'll then face Jessica Niri Plata after that, later on in the year. Evelyn Bermudez, she's fighting former champion Tenkai Tsunami in defense of her IBF and WBO titles. It would seem that everybody's got a dance partner, everybody's booked, which also means don't expect any unification matches to come out of this division in the near future. A blessing in disguise for Sarah, because she won't have either Evelyn or Lourdes breathing down her neck for a unification match that affords her more time to amass more experience, and at only 5-0, she needs it. She needs as much experience as she can get. So a lot more work needs doing before she's ready to take on any of the other 2 champions at the weight, both of which are a lot more experienced than she is. So she will be taking on Spain's own Christina Navarro early next month on the 7th, and we'll talk more about that fight as the fight date approaches. In men's middleweight news, unified middleweight champion Janibek took aim at Carlos Adames ahead of his fight with Hamza Shiraz, saying, "I can't understand Carlos at all. I have 2 titles, and I challenged him. He didn't agree, and he decided to fight Shiraz. Payday." When you put it that way, it's easy to understand. Boxing Hamza gets him more money in Saudi than boxing you nowhere. Because to my knowledge, Top Rank didn't make a play to do that fight. But then again, neither did the PBC. It seems to me that putting the fight together is more trouble than it's worth to both promotional outfits, and thus neither one of them is willing to pay to do it.
But didn't Carlos say they made him an offer?
Yeah, but I didn't buy into that because look at the state of affairs at the PBC. Look at how many shows they're not doing now.
And look at how many of their fighters they are now outsourcing, as that's the only way to keep them busy. Some are ending up in Riyadh season shows, others on Pro Box.
Stanionis' next fight is on Matchroom. The only way the PBC can keep them active is to rent them out to other promoters. The only way they can make money from them is skimming whatever percentage they get out of those fighters' purses. So that when a Carlos Adames says that he made Janibek an offer, I don't believe him. Your people ain't got no resources. They ain't got no money.
Now what's confusing?
Where Janibek Alamkanalai says that he doesn't understand Carlos, I don't really understand Turkey. Turkey could have took this as an opportunity to make the unification match between Janibek and Carlos. Instead, he chose to give that opportunity to Hamza.
No complaints, by the way. I love Shiraz versus Adames. I'm just a little bit surprised that Janibek has not made an appearance in a Riyadh season show yet, but so many other guys have, where he's a unified champion, unbeaten.
But they haven't brought him over yet. If there's something I'm struggling to understand, it's that. So now, he's set to box some nobody in Kazakhstan in defense of his 2 alphabet titles while saying, Adames is afraid to fight me because I beat him in sparring.
Gym stories.
It used to be that what happened in a gym setting was sacred, and the fighters wouldn't really talk about it. You'd hear rumors, whereas now
everybody's telling on everybody.
What caught me by surprise was that veteran boxing scribe Dan Rafael decided to chime in saying, blah blah blah, said the guy whose own promoter is happy to ship him off to his home country on somebody else's dime because he can't draw ratings or sell tickets.
Whoa.
Seemingly taking Carlos Adames aside, to which Janibek responded, who are you?
This perspective caught me by surprise because of who it was coming from, and because you could say the exact same thing about Carlos Adames. It is true. Janibek doesn't sell a bunch of tickets, and he doesn't draw big ratings, but neither does Carlos, and Carlos still is an undercard fighter, where at least Janibek headlines his own events.
And so I found it surprising that Dan Rafael said what he said, seemingly taking sides. I noticed that ever since he stopped working at ESPN, he's been partial towards the PBC, here and there.
Letting it slip.
And letting his cards show, because for saying that, once again, you could say the exact same thing about Carlos Adames. He doesn't draw big ratings. He doesn't sell a bunch of tickets.
So when you see that Janibek is calling him out, why would you take offense? Why would you take that as an opportunity to castigate him?
Janibek Alamkanalai responded by asking, who are you, Dan Rafael? Who is Carlos Adames to you?
Who is the PBC?
I believe that a lot of Dan Rafael's inside sources, quote-unquote, these days, have everything to do with the PBC, that if anybody's leaking information to him, it's somebody on that side.
Which is why he's partial now.
I noticed the other day, Dan Rafael released an estimate of what David Benavidez's pay-per-view with David Morrell did, in the neighborhood of 150 to 160,000 pay-per-view buys, which was a far cry from Boxing Insider Rick Glacier's number.
80,000 or just under that?
And I thought to myself, whoever Dan Rafael's source is that leaks these numbers to him, it's likely somebody at the PBC.
Somebody over there fudging the numbers and exaggerating about what they are.
But there is still an affiliation, which is why at times he does seem partial to the PBC and their fighters. When you go on the attack, when you attack Janibek for calling out Carlos,
when you say that Janibek isn't a draw, yeah, Carlos isn't either.
when you say that he's being outsourced because he can't sell tickets or draw ratings, neither can Carlos, and he's being outsourced too.
Pot meet kettle.
Now I anticipate that the green and gold belt is going to change hands this weekend, and Carlos won't be champion for much longer since Dan Rafael is so protective of him.
So averse to Janibek calling him out.
But if the prediction sticks and Hamza Shiraz becomes WBC middleweight champion, I don't think Frank Warren is going to throw caution to the wind and chuck him in there with Janibek right after that. No, Hamza has the most potential to become a draw at this weight. At which point, Janibek's best bet to unify a title with somebody would have to be Arislandi Lara, who to my knowledge isn't doing anything, doesn't have a dance partner. Maybe Turkey can put them in the ring with each other in one of his Ring magazine cards.
I just find it odd that he hasn't found use for Janibek yet. He's given guys like Martin Bakoli and Zile Zhang opportunities. They're not champions.
Israel Madrimov, who's not even a champion anymore, is set to make his second Riyadh season appearance, where Janibek has yet to make his first.
I don't want to sound overly critical, I'm just a little bit confused as to why Turkey hasn't used him yet.
Rumors abound north of middleweight at super middleweight. According to Fight Hook News, former world champion Caleb Plant versus super middleweight contender Diego Pacheco is being rumored to take place on the undercard of the Canelo versus Skull undisputed fight in Saudi Arabia, May 3rd.
Not a bad fight. It's just what the doctor ordered for Diego Pacheco, to fight a former champion like Caleb Plant, a somebody.
Caleb's coming off of that win over Trevor McCumbee. Diego's coming off of that win over then unbeaten Steven Nelson.
Good fight.
Now, very recently, Christian Mbilli and his team walked away from the Kevin Lele Sajo fight in France.
Scheduling conflict.
And they made some mention of going the WBC route, which would guide them towards a Diego Pacheco fight that they're calling for. Eye of the Tiger head honcho Camille Estefan is calling for a super middleweight showdown between his fighter Christian Mbilli and Matchroom's Diego Pacheco. Estefan claims that he has not heard back from Pacheco's team.
So is the reason that he hasn't heard back from them because they're enthralled in negotiations for a Caleb Plant fight?
Now, these are just rumors, and they should be treated as such. And as such, I like a Caleb Plant fight for Diego just as much as I like a Christian Mbilli fight, because I think he beats them both.
Different styles. You know, Caleb's a pure boxer, whereas Christian's a pressure fighter.
Diego's a boxer puncher.
Well, didn't you once say that pure boxers give boxer punchers a lot of problems?
They do. It's a tricky style for the boxer puncher because they don't have the same openings they normally have with, say, pressure guys or other boxer punchers. So it can be tricky, it can be frustrating, but if I trust that Diego can knock out Caleb Plant, it's because Caleb doesn't have the best engine.
He characteristically fades down the stretch.
And the idea that you're just gonna pot shot and box from the outside, not with Diego. He's actually got a lot more height and length than Caleb Plant, so taking that approach, it may not work out.
Don't forget about his power. He's got power, more I think than Caleb.
So even if Caleb has some of the right tools for the job, he's still lacking in some areas enough that I would pick Diego to beat him.
And Christian?
Well, with Christian, it's a lot more straightforward. He's going to barrel forward trying to crowd Diego, and he's going to walk into something hard and get taken out. That's how I see it. So I'm actually okay with either fight, whichever one ends up happening. If these rumors check out and turn out to be true and he fights Caleb, I'm okay with that. If he doesn't and he fights Christian, I'm okay with that too. I like either fight.
And now for the main course.
The main event of tomorrow's big Saudi mega card. I've been avoiding this, admittedly. I've been putting it off.
I almost don't want to pick because a fight like this, anything could happen.
I always thought that eventually Father Time would catch up to Artur Beterbiev. He would start to slow down, lose a step, and that would open the door for Dmitry Bivol to beat him. But I was wrong. He beat Dmitry.
And given how injury-prone he has been over the years, the signs were there, the would-be red flags, but no, he beat Dmitry, and he proved me wrong.
So now I'm left wondering, is he gonna do it again? I don't expect much about Artur to change.
Because he's not the one that has to. He's not the one that lost. The old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If keeping the pressure on and keeping the punches coming is what won you the last fight, you're gonna do more of that in this one.
It's Dmitry that has to adjust. It's Dmitry that has to change, but how? It seems like physically he's outmatched. His footwork is just as good as yours. That's why he was able to keep up with you.
His engine is just as good as yours because he didn't fade down the stretch. He didn't tire. Whenever you had a good moment, he responded with a good moment of his own.
You've got great movement, great defense. He's got great offense.
To contrast your great defense.
And even though he's reached an age where Father Time could show up at any minute, you wouldn't know it based on how he performed in his last fight, because he's not the kind of guy who's going to go damaging his body, his temple, partying and imbibing in alcoholic beverages and recreational drugs. He's a consummate professional. He was coming off a knee injury in his last fight. So if you were gonna beat him, that would have been the ideal time to do it.
No, I just don't know.
It's a crapshoot. I picked Dmitry Bivol to win the first fight, and some people think he won, but at the end of it, I didn't. I felt that Artur had done enough.
Artur's punches were more eye-catching, more impactful. Dmitry spent far too much time circling away on the ropes.
Even when Dmitry would let go of a salvo of punches and step into them, Artur would respond almost immediately and back him off. I don't know what Dmitry plans on changing for this rematch.
Don't know.
But here's what we do know. Artur's not coming off an injury this time, and this is a relatively quick turnaround for what has been a sparsely active fighter over the years.
He'll have momentum now.
I think that might make him sharper now, sharper than he was in the first fight, because this is a quick turnaround. And I think I'm going to go with Artur Beterbiev this time. I think I'm going to go with Artur by way of knockout. They know each other well.
They know what they've got. But at the end of the fight, it looked a lot more physically taxing for Dmitry than it did for Artur. Now that Artur has had a taste of what Dmitry brings to the table,
may feel emboldened because he knows that Dmitry can't hurt him. Come on, the only guy that got hurt in their initial meeting was Dmitry, not Artur.
nothing Dmitry Bivol did stopped Artur's forward momentum. Nothing, not even when he was landing punches.
Didn't discourage him. He couldn't hold the center of the ring. Time after time, he's getting backed into the ropes. He'll have a moment of success. Then Artur will steal it from him.
This time, I think it's gonna be worse. This time, I think now that Artur's had a closer look at the guy and he knows what he's got, he's gonna stop him.
The aesthetic of the fight, I don't expect it to be all that different from the first one. Not at the start.
It'll be tight at first.
Tense, but they're going to pick up where they left off with the knowledge they bring to the table from their initial meeting. And I think if Artur learned anything, it's that he can get to Dmitry, he can keep the pressure on him, he can hurt him, he just needs to turn it up a little more.
He doesn't have to change much.
If you even want to call it a change, I'd call it just doing more, even more of the same thing, because that's what worked.
And Dmitry?
You know, the stuff that I've been seeing from Dmitry in the build-up leads me to believe that they've been working on clinch work.
And exiting the pocket safely.
In my estimation, that's what it looks like they've been working on to perhaps try and smother Artur Beterbiev's work, to stifle his momentum.
I don't trust that, though.
36 minutes is a long time to be in there with Artur Beterbiev, and because he's seen you before, because he knows what you've got, like I said, that might leave him feeling so emboldened to take even more chances. Just turn it up a little more, because now he knows he can hurt you.
So I'm gonna go with Artur Beterbiev by way of knockout. I think he seals the deal this time. I think because he's not coming off an injury and because this is a quick turnaround, he might have a career best performance.
Might be in rare form.
Nothing against Dmitry because I like both fighters. But like I said, at the end of the last one, it looked like it was a lot more physically taxing for Dmitry than it was for Artur.
Don't imagine that's gonna change in this one.
I almost don't want to pick the burden of trying to get it right instead of just sitting back and enjoying the show.
But you know, if I gotta pick one of these guys to win this weekend, it's Artur. He's made me a believer.
He's a lot more than just the knockout merchant.